The massive alien ships appeared above Earth's orbital station without warning. 500 warships, each one the size of a small city, blocked out the stars. Their hulls were smooth and silver, covered in symbols that no human had ever seen before. At the center of the formation floated the largest vessel, a command ship that dwarfed everything humanity had ever built in space. Inside Earth's orbital station, alarms screamed. Station personnel ran to their posts, their faces pale with fear. No one had expected this. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago, and they had been careful to avoid attracting attention. They had explored quietly, staying away from the busy parts of the galaxy. But now, it seemed, the galaxy had come to them. Ambassador Krelix stood on the bridge of his command ship, his forearms crossed over his chitinous chest. He was tall, nearly 8 feet, with deep purple skin that shimmered under the ship's lights. His large black eyes showed no emotion as he looked at the primitive human station through the viewscreen. This would be easy, he thought. It was always easy. Open a channel to the humans, he ordered. His voice was deep and resonated through the bridge. His crew moved quickly to obey. They had done this hundreds of times before, with hundreds of different species. The result was always the same. The viewscreen flickered and a human face appeared. It was a woman, perhaps in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore a plain gray suit with a small Earth flag pin on her collar. Her name appeared on the screen, Sarah Chun, Earth's ambassador to the galactic community. "This is Ambassador Sarah Chun of Earth," she said. Her voice was calm, almost casual. "You've entered Earth's sovereign space without permission. Please state your intentions." Krelix felt a moment of surprise. Most species were already trembling by this point. But he dismissed it. Ignorance, he decided. They simply didn't understand their situation yet. "I am Ambassador Krelix of the Galactic Council," he announced. His voice was designed to intimidate, to make lesser species understand their place. For 10,000 years, the Council has maintained peace and order across the galaxy. We have united 847 species under our law. Now, we extend this same opportunity to humanity. Sarah Chun raised one eyebrow. "Opportunity? That's an interesting word for it," Krelix continued, ignoring her comment. He had a speech prepared, one he had given many times. "The Galactic Council demands that Earth submit to our authority immediately. You will dismantle all military vessels and weapons. You will accept Council governors who will guide your species toward civilization. You will open your planet to Council inspection and oversight. You will—" Sarah Chun laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a polite chuckle. It was genuine laughter, the kind that came from finding something truly funny. She covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking. Behind her, other human officials looked at each other with worried expressions, but she just kept laughing. The bridge of Krelix's ship fell completely silent. His crew stared at their screens, confused. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever laughed at a council demand. Fear, anger, desperation, these were normal responses. But laughter? "My apologies," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry, that was rude. But did you seriously just fly 500 warships to Earth to demand we surrender? Without even talking to us first? Without any negotiation?" Krelix felt his anger rising. "This is not a negotiation, human. This is an ultimatum. You have 48 hours to—" "Let me stop you right there," Sarah interrupted. She leaned forward, her smile fading. "Ambassador Krelix, on behalf of Earth and all humanity, I politely decline your generous offer." "Decline?" Krelix couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You cannot decline. We have 500 warships. You have barely a dozen. We have technology that is thousands of years more advanced than yours. We have conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. You are one small planet with primitive weapons and no allies. You have no choice." Sarah Chun smiled again, but this time there was no humor in it. "We always have a choice. And we choose to remain free. Then you choose death." Krelix roared. "We will burn your cities. We will destroy your ships. You'll do none of those things, Sarah said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it now. Because you don't understand what you're dealing with. You think we're primitive because we only recently developed FTL travel. You think we're weak because we haven't built a galactic empire. But let me tell you something about humanity, Ambassador. She stood up, walking closer to the camera. We've been watching you. For 40 years, we've been listening to your broadcasts, studying your ships, learning your tactics. We know about the Council. We know about your empire. And we know exactly how you fight. Do you know what we discovered? Krellick said nothing. His mouth felt dry. We discovered that you've never fought anyone who fights back. Every species you've encountered has either surrendered immediately or fought a conventional war that you could win with superior numbers. You've never faced an enemy who refuses to play by your rules. You've never faced an enemy who's spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. Your threats mean nothing, Krellick said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. We will crush you. Maybe, Sarah admitted. Maybe you'll win. Your ships are better. Your weapons are more advanced. But let me tell you what will happen if you attack us. First, you'll lose half your fleet taking our outer colonies. Then you'll lose another quarter trying to reach Earth. And if you somehow make it to Earth itself, you'll find that every human city has enough weapons hidden underground to turn this into the longest, bloodiest siege you've ever seen. We don't have antimatter cannons or gravitational disruptors, but we have billions of people who will fight for every inch of their world. We have soldiers who've trained their entire lives for this, and we have absolutely nothing to lose. She paused, letting her words sink in. So here's my counteroffer, Ambassador. You have 48 hours to leave Earth space. Take your fleet and go back to the Council. Tell them that humanity wishes to remain independent. Tell them we're willing to talk, to trade, to coexist peacefully. But tell them that if they try to force us to submit, they'll discover why humans are the only species on Earth that survived 6 mass extinctions. Krellick stared at her. This was impossible. Species didn't speak to the Council this way. They didn't threaten. They didn't refuse. You're making a mistake, he said finally. The Council has never lost a war. Sarah Chun smiled that cold smile again. There's a first time for everything, Ambassador. 48 hours. I suggest you use them wisely. The screen went black. Krellick stood in the silence of his bridge, his 4 hands clenched into fists. Around him, his crew waited for orders. He had come here expecting an easy victory, another primitive species added to the Council's long list of conquests. Instead, he had found something he didn't understand. Prepare the fleet, he ordered quietly. We attack in 48 hours. But as his crew rushed to obey, Krellick couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The human ambassador's words echoed in his mind. You have no idea what you've just done. What had he done? He was about to conquer a primitive planet, nothing more. It should be simple. It should be easy. So why did he feel, for the first time in his long career, something that might have been fear? The council chambers were enormous, built to hold representatives from hundreds of species. The ceiling stretched up for hundreds of feet, covered in glowing symbols that represented every world under council control. 847 symbols, each one marking a species that had bent its knee to the council's authority. Soon, the humans would add one more. Ambassador Krellick stood at the center of the chamber, addressing the High Council. 5 beings sat on raised platforms above him, each representing one of the council's founding species. They listened as he described his encounter with the human ambassador. The human refused our terms, Krellick explained. She laughed at our demands and told us to leave Earth space within 48 hours. The council members looked at each other. One of them, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Visera, pulsed with light as it spoke. Laughed? How unusual. Still, this changes nothing. Their response is irrelevant. We will proceed with the standard conquest protocol. Agreed, said another council member, a being made of crystalline structures that reflected light in rainbow patterns. The intelligence reports are clear. Humanity is no threat to us. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, showing detailed information about Earth and its colonies. The data looked damning for humanity. They had only 12 military vessels in orbit around Earth, with perhaps another 50 scattered across their small cluster of colonies. Their weapons were basic plasma cannons and missile systems. Their fastest ships could barely reach half the speed of Council vessels. They discovered faster than light travel only 40 years ago, noted Viscera. 40 years? Some of us on this council are older than their entire space program. They are infants playing with toys. Krelix shifted uncomfortably. The human ambassador seemed very confident. She spoke as if they had prepared for this encounter. Of course she did, said a fourth council member, a massive being covered in thick scales. It's called bluffing. Primitive species often try to appear stronger than they are. It's a basic survival instinct. We've seen it hundreds of times. The crystalline being made a sound like chiming bells, which the translation system rendered as laughter. Look at their history. They've been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. In that same time, some council species haven't even finished a single building project. They are primitive in every measurable way. But one council member had remained silent throughout the discussion. Zix was old, even by galactic standards. His species had been part of the council since its founding 10,000 years ago. He was small, barely 4 feet tall, with gray wrinkled skin and large eyes that had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. What troubles you, Zix? Viscera asked. You haven't spoken? Zix studied the holographic display with his ancient eyes. I'm looking at their planet's history, he said quietly. The data our probes collected over the years. It single quotes S ... concerning. Concerning? How? Krelix asked. Zix manipulated the display, bringing up different images. They showed Earth's surface throughout its history. Notice anything unusual about their development? The other council members studied the images. They saw cities rise and fall. They saw forests burned and regrown. They saw the marks of industry spreading across the planet's surface. They industrialized quickly, Viscera noted. That's not unusual for a species on the verge of space travel. Look closer, Zix insisted. He zoomed in on specific locations. Here, see these marks? These are craters, nuclear weapons. And here, evidence of biological warfare. And here, these structures? Fortifications. Everywhere on their planet, you'll find the ruins of fortifications. So they had some wars, the scaled council member said dismissively. Every species has conflicts before they mature. Some wars? Zix's voice rose slightly. By my count, they've had over 15,000 distinct wars in the last 5,000 years alone. 15,000. And these weren't small conflicts. Some of them killed tens of millions. They developed nuclear weapons and immediately used them on each other. They created diseases specifically designed to kill their own species. They built artificial intelligences and then had to fight wars to shut them down when they went rogue. The council chamber fell silent. Viscera pulsed uncertainly. Surely that's an error in the data. No species could survive that level of conflict. It's not an error, Zix said. I checked it 3 times. Humanity has spent its entire existence fighting. Not fighting other species, fighting themselves. Every human nation, every human tribe, every human city has spent thousands of years finding better ways to kill other humans. While we were building our peaceful galactic civilization, they were building bigger weapons. Krelix felt cold. But their technology is primitive. Our scans confirmed it, is it? Zix asked. He changed the display again, showing close-ups of human ships. Look at these vessels. Yes, they're slower than ours. Yes, their weapons are less powerful. But look at the armor. It's incredibly thick, much thicker than any council ship would need. And look at these systems. Everything is redundant. They have backup systems for their backup systems. Why would a species build ships like that? No one answered. I'll tell you why, Zix continued. Because they expect their ships to be damaged. They expect to be hit, to be boarded, to be disabled. So they build ships that can keep fighting even when they're falling apart. This isn't the design philosophy of a peaceful species. This is the design philosophy of a species that's been fighting for survival since the day it crawled out of the ocean. You're overthinking this, Visvera said. But there was less certainty in its voice now. We have 500 ships. They have a few dozen. The mathematics are clear. Zix looked at each council member in turn. Mathematics don't account for desperation, or creativity, or the willingness to sacrifice everything for survival. I've studied hundreds of species over my lifetime. Most of them were peaceful like us. They built civilizations based on cooperation and logic. But every once in a while we encounter a species that evolved differently. A species that survived not through cooperation, but through competition. Not through peace, but through war. What are you suggesting? Krelix asked. I'm suggesting that maybe the human ambassador wasn't bluffing, Zix said quietly. I'm suggesting that maybe we're about to attack the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Not because they're more advanced than us, but because they're more experienced in the one thing that matters when civilizations clash, war. The scaled council member slammed a massive fist on its platform. Enough! You speak of war as if it's something special, something we should fear. The council was built on peace, yes, but we've conquered 847 species. We know how to wage war when necessary. Do we? Zix asked. When was the last time we actually fought a war? I don't mean a conquest where a primitive species surrendered after seeing our ships. I mean a real war where both sides were willing to sacrifice everything to win. The silence stretched on. No one could answer. It's been 7,000 years, Zix said finally. 7,000 years since we faced an opponent who truly fought back. And in those 7,000 years we've grown soft. We've forgotten what war really means. But humanity? They've never forgotten. They've never stopped practicing. Visvera pulsed with agitation. This is absurd. You're suggesting we should fear a primitive species because they're good at killing each other. Their internal conflicts mean nothing in the face of our superior technology. I hope you're right, Zix said. He looked at the holographic display of Earth, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. I truly hope you're right. Because if you're wrong, this won't be a conquest. It will be a bloodbath. And I'm not sure which side will bleed more. Krelix felt his earlier unease growing stronger. But he pushed it aside. The council had made its decision. The fleet was ready. The humans would submit or they would be destroyed. It was that simple, wasn't it? The council session ended with a formal vote. 5-0 in favor of the attack. Even Zix voted yes, though he did so with obvious reluctance. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Krelix approached Zix. Do you really think we're making a mistake? The old being looked up at him with those ancient eyes. I think we're about to learn something important about the universe, he said quietly. I just hope we survive the lesson. The mining colony on Perseverance 7 was small, just 200 people living and working on a rocky moon at the edge of human space. They mined rare metals and sent them back to Earth once a month. It was dangerous work, but the pay was good. And the people who chose to work there were tough and independent. When the council fleet arrived, the colony's warning systems gave them 15 minutes of notice. It wasn't much time, but it was enough. Station Commander Marcus Webb was a former military officer, a veteran of the resource wars back on Earth. He'd come to Perseverance 7 to get away from conflict, to live a quiet life mining rocks. So much for that plan. Everyone to the shelters, he ordered over the colony-wide speakers. This is not a drill. We have 15 minutes before they arrive. The colonists moved quickly. They'd practiced this scenario a dozen times, even though most of them thought it would never happen. Now it was real. Parents grabbed children. Workers abandoned their equipment. Within 10 minutes, most of the colony was underground in the reinforced shelters. Marcus stayed in the command center with 3 other volunteers. They were all former military, all veterans of Earth's various conflicts. They knew this was probably suicide, but someone had to stay. Someone had to fight. "Ships incoming," reported Linda Torres, the colony's chief engineer. "Holy hell, there's a lot of them. I count 40 vessels. All of them bigger than anything we've got." "What have we got to work with?" Marcus asked. 2 orbital defense platforms with plasma cannons. 6 automated missile pods. And the mining charges. Marcus smiled grimly. "Mining charges aren't exactly military weapons." "No," Linda agreed. "But they're still explosives. Big ones. We use them to crack asteroids." "They'll crack ships just fine." The Council fleet approached cautiously. They'd been told this was a minor colony with minimal defenses. Still, protocol required a proper attack formation. 40 ships arranged themselves in a sphere around the moon, ready to bombard it from all sides at once. The lead Council ship broadcast a message. "Human colony, this is the Galactic Council fleet. You have violated galactic law by refusing to surrender. Your settlement will now be destroyed as an example to your species. You have 5 minutes to evacuate." Marcus picked up the microphone. "Yeah, about that. We'd like to decline your generous offer. This is not negotiable. Evacuation or death, you know what?" Marcus said. "We choose option 3. He cut the connection and turned to his crew. "Light them up." The orbital defense platforms opened fire. Bright blue plasma bolts streaked through the darkness, slamming into the shields of the nearest Council ships. The shields held easily. The platforms weren't powerful enough to break through. But that wasn't the point. "Missiles away," Torres reported. 6 automated pods released their payloads. Dozens of missiles accelerated toward the Council fleet, their engines burning bright. The Council ships responded with automated defense systems. Point defense lasers and interceptor drones destroyed most of the missiles before they could hit. A few got through, exploding against shields without doing any real damage. On the bridge of the lead Council ship, Commander Thexanol watched the display with something like pity. The humans were brave, he'd give them that. But bravery meant nothing against superior firepower. "Return fire," he ordered. "Destroy the platforms and the colony. Make it quick." Energy beams lanced out from the Council ships. The orbital platforms exploded in seconds, turned to molten slag by weapons far beyond their ability to withstand. The beams turned toward the colony itself, ready to burn through rock and metal, to reach the people hiding below. That's when the mining charges detonated. The colonists had spent the last week planting charges all over the moon's surface. Hundreds of them, each one powerful enough to crack open an asteroid. They'd wired them all together and buried them under rock and ice where the Council scanners wouldn't detect them when they exploded. A significant chunk of Perseverance 7's surface erupted into space. Billions of tons of rock and ice and metal flew outward in all directions at incredible speed. It was like a shotgun blast, and the Council fleet was standing right in front of it. The debris cloud hit them in seconds. Rocks the size of houses slammed into shields at thousands of miles per hour. The shields held, but they weren't designed for this kind of sustained bombardment. Warning alarms screamed on every Council ship as their shield generators overloaded. "Evasive action?" Dexal shouted, but it was too late. The fleet was too tightly packed, arranged in their perfect sphere. They couldn't maneuver without running into each other. A piece of debris, the size of a bus, punched through a weakened shield and tore through the hull of a Council frigate. Atmosphere vented into space. Another ship took a direct hit to its engines and went spinning out of control, colliding with 2 other vessels on Perseverance 7. Marcus watched the chaos on his screens and allowed himself a small smile. "Now send them the real surprise?" Torres launched the mining ships. They were small, automated vessels designed to travel to nearby asteroids and bring back ore. The colony had 6 of them, and the colonists had spent the last week modifying them. They'd stripped out all the mining equipment and filled them with every explosive they could find. Then they'd programmed them to fly straight at the Council ships at maximum speed, The Council sensors picked up the small ships immediately, but they were busy dealing with the debris cloud. By the time they realized the threat, the mining ships were already too close. 3 of them were destroyed by point defense systems. But 3 got through. They slammed into Council vessels at full speed and detonated. The explosions were enormous. Fed by the mining charges packed into every available space, 2 Council ships were crippled, their hulls breached in multiple places. The 3rd ship's shields failed completely and the explosion tore it in half. The Xanal stared at his screens in disbelief. They'd lost 3 ships and had 4 more badly damaged. Against a mining colony. A mining colony with 200 people and no military vessels. All ships pull back, he ordered. Get us out of this debris field. The Council fleet retreated, regrouping at a safe distance. Behind them, Perseverance 7 was silent. The explosions had destroyed most of the colony's surface structures. The people in the shelters were trapped, but alive. Should we finish them? His second-in-command asked. Xanal thought about it. They could bombard the moon from a distance, turn the whole thing into molten rock. But that would take time and resources. And it wouldn't change what had just happened. A mining colony had just destroyed 3 of their ships and damaged 4 more. No, he said quietly. We move on to the next target. We need to report this to the fleet commander. As the Council ships jumped to FTL, leaving Perseverance 7 behind, Marcus and his team emerged from the shelters. The colony was gone, turned to rubble and twisted metal. But they were alive. And they'd made the Council bleed? Think they got the message? Torres asked. Marcus looked up at the stars where the Council fleet had disappeared. Yeah, he said. I think they got it. We're not going to make this easy. The news of Perseverance 7 spread quickly through both human and Council channels. The Council had attacked 6 human colonies that day. They'd won all 6 battles, but the cost had been staggering. 20 ships destroyed. 30 more damaged. And they hadn't even reached Earth yet. Ambassador Krelix received the reports on his command ship and felt that cold feeling growing stronger. The humans were supposed to surrender after losing their first colonies. That's what every other species had done. See the overwhelming power of the Council, realize resistance was futile, and give up, but humans didn't work that way. They didn't see overwhelming odds and surrender. They saw overwhelming odds and started looking for creative ways to even the score, the mining ships, the hidden explosives, the debris clouds. None of it was particularly advanced technology. It was just ordinary equipment used in ways the Council had never imagined. Because the Council had never needed to imagine them. They'd never fought an enemy desperate enough, creative enough, and experienced enough to turn peaceful tools into weapons. Krelix looked at the casualty reports again. 40 ships lost or damaged in the first day. Against colonies with no military vessels. What would happen when they reached Earth itself, where humanity's actual military waited? He was beginning to understand what Sarah Chun had tried to tell him. The Council had never lost a war, true, but they'd never fought a war against humanity, and humanity had never lost a species-wide war either. Because every war humanity had ever fought, they'd fought against themselves. They'd spent 10,000 years learning how to beat opponents with superior technology, superior numbers, and superior positions. They'd perfected the art of winning. When victory should be impossible, the Council was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 3 weeks after the first attacks on human colonies, Ambassador Krelix stood on the bridge of his flagship and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The Council fleet had been reduced to less than 300 ships. They'd started with 500. More than 200 vessels destroyed or damaged beyond repair. And they still hadn't reached Earth, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they weren't losing to a superior military force. They were losing to tactics they couldn't predict, strategies they couldn't counter, and an enemy that refused to fight the way wars were supposed to be fought. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the supply depot at Kepler Station, his communications officer reported. They're under attack? Under attack? Krelix demanded. By what? There are no human military vessels in that sector. They don't know, sir. Their sensors aren't picking up any ships, but the station's shields are failing and the officer's face went pale. Sir, the station just went offline. Krelix pulled up the tactical display. Kepler Station was 3 light-years behind their main fleet, deep in Council-controlled space. It was supposed to be completely safe, far from any human presence. It was where they stored fuel, ammunition, and supplies for the fleet. Send a patrol to investigate, he ordered, and increase security at all our supply points. But by the time the patrol arrived at Kepler Station 6 hours later, there was nothing left to investigate. The entire station was gone, torn apart by explosions from the inside. The patrol sensors detected traces of radiation that matched human nuclear weapons, but no sign of any human ships. How did they get there? Krelix asked his tactical officer. How did they attack a station deep in our territory without us detecting them? The tactical officer, a veteran named Jexil, studied the data with growing concern. I think they've been there for weeks, sir. Maybe longer. Look at these radiation signatures. They're old, at least a month old. The humans didn't send ships to attack the station. They had people already on the station. That's impossible. We would have detected them, would we? Jexil asked. Sir, we've been assuming the humans are reacting to our invasion. But what if they've been preparing for this for years? What if they've had agents, saboteurs, and spies throughout Council space for decades? Krelix felt sick. Show me all the attacks from the last 3 weeks. The supply lines, the communication hubs, the surprise attacks. Show me everything. The display lit up with dozens of red markers, each one showing a location where the Council had been attacked. Krelix had thought they were random, opportunistic strikes by scattered human forces. But now, looking at the pattern, he saw something else. Every attack had hit a critical piece of Council infrastructure. Supply depots, communication relays, repair facilities, and fuel stations. The humans weren't just fighting the fleet. They were systematically destroying everything the fleet needed to function. They've been watching us, Krelix said slowly. All this time, while we thought they were isolated and primitive, they've been monitoring our communications, tracking our ships, mapping our supply routes. They knew exactly what we'd do before we did it. Another alarm sounded. This time it was closer to home. A Council colony world called Nexus Prime was reporting an attack. But this wasn't a military attack. It was something worse. They've released a virus into Nexus Prime's computer systems, the communications officer reported. It's spreading through the planetary network. All automated defenses are offline. All communications are down. Even the basic life support systems in the cities are failing. Can we stop it? No, sir. It's like nothing our technicians have ever seen. It's adapting faster than we can counter it. They're saying it'll take weeks to purge the system and restore control. Krelix closed his eyes. Nexus Prime was a major Council world with a population of 2 billion. Without automated systems, the planet would descend into chaos. And there was nothing the fleet could do to help. Sir, incoming ships, the tactical officer shouted. 40 vessels, human design emerging from FTL at multiple vectors. Finally, Krelix thought. A real battle. Something he could understand. All ships, battle stations. Let's show these humans what happens when they face us directly. But as the human ships approached, something seemed wrong. They were moving slowly, almost lazily. Their weapons weren't charging. They weren't taking any aggressive action. What are they doing? Krelix muttered. That's when the sensors detected the real threat. Thousands of them, small objects accelerating from deep space at incredible speeds. The Council sensors had dismissed them as asteroids or space debris, but they weren't asteroids. They were rocks. Simple rocks, each one about the size of a car. The humans had positioned them in deep space weeks ago, invisible and inert. Now, at the perfect moment, they'd activated hidden propulsion systems and accelerated them to a significant fraction of light speed. At those speeds, a rock became a devastating weapon. The kinetic energy was enormous. When they hit with the force of nuclear bombs. Evasive action. Krellick screamed, but there wasn't time. The rocks had too much velocity. The ships had too little room to maneuver. The first impacts tore through council shields like they weren't even there. Pure kinetic force, impossible to block with energy barriers. Ships exploded. Hulls crumpled. In 30 seconds, the council fleet lost another 15 vessels. The human ships watched from a safe distance, never firing a single shot. They didn't need to. They'd let physics do the work. Krellick ordered the fleet to scatter, to put distance between the ships. The kinetic barrage lasted another 2 minutes, then stopped. When it was over, 23 more council ships were gone and another 30 were damaged, and the human ships simply jumped back to FTL and disappeared. Why didn't they press the attack? Jexil asked. They could have destroyed more of us while we were regrouping. Because they don't need to, Krellick said bitterly. They're not trying to destroy us in one battle. They're bleeding us slowly, making every day more expensive than the last. Every attack costs them almost nothing and costs us ships, supplies, and morale. He was right. Over the next week, the pattern continued. Human forces would strike from unexpected angles, using unconventional weapons and tactics. They'd target supply lines, communication networks, and isolated ships. They never fought a stand-up battle where the Council's superior. Technology could make a difference. They'd release computer viruses that shut down entire planets. They'd deploy autonomous drones that would hide in asteroid fields and attack passing Council ships. They'd use psychological warfare, broadcasting messages that highlighted every Council defeat and made their own forces seem unstoppable, and it was working. Council crews were exhausted. Morale was collapsing. Aliens who joined the fleet expecting an easy conquest were now demanding to go home. Supply ships were refusing to leave port, afraid they'd be ambushed. Worse, other species were watching. Species that the Council had conquered centuries ago were starting to ask questions. If the humans could fight the Council to a standstill, why couldn't they? Rebellions were starting on 3 different worlds. The entire Council structure was beginning to crack. Krellick received a priority message from the Council itself. They wanted a status report. They wanted to know when Earth would surrender. He looked at the tactical display. His fleet was now down to 250 ships. They'd fought for 3 weeks and hadn't even reached Earth yet. And based on the intelligence reports, Earth's actual military, not the colonists or the irregular forces they'd been fighting, was still waiting for them at the home system. Completely untouched, he thought about Sarah Chun's warning. You'll lose half your fleet taking our outer colonies. Then you'll lose another quarter trying to reach Earth. She'd been right. He had lost half his fleet to the colonies. He'd lost another quarter to ambush and sabotage. He had 250 ships left. Earth itself was defended by at least 100 human military vessels, plus countless defense platforms, automated systems, and millions of soldiers, and he was beginning to suspect that everything they'd faced so far had been a delaying action. The humans had been buying time, preparing their real defenses. And studying how the Council fought, Krellick opened a communication channel to the Council. "This is Ambassador Krellick," he said slowly. "I need to report a change in the situation." He paused, trying to find the right words. "How did you tell the most powerful government in the galaxy that they were losing a war to a species they'd thought was primitive?" "The humans," he said finally, "are not what we expected." That was the understatement of the century. The humans weren't just unexpected. They were terrifying. Not because they had better weapons or bigger ships, but because they fought like nothing the Council had ever encountered. They fought like a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to survive against impossible odds. And they were very, very good at it. 6 months after the Council's first ultimatum, Ambassador Krellick returned to Earth's orbital station. But this time he came in a single ship, unarmed and unescorted. The massive fleet that had arrived with him was gone. Some ships had been destroyed. Others had been captured. Most had simply limped back to Council space, damaged and depleted. The war was over. The Council had lost. Krellick waited in a small conference room, his 4 arms resting on the table in front of him. He felt old and tired. The last 6 months had aged him in ways he couldn't quite describe. He'd learned things about warfare, about humanity, and about his own species that he wished he could forget. The door opened and Sarah Chun entered. She looked the same as she had 6 months ago, calm and professional. But Krelix now knew what lay behind that calm exterior. This woman wasn't just a diplomat. She was a former Special Forces commander, a veteran of Earth's resource wars, and currently the director of something called Xenorelations, a department that combined diplomacy, intelligence, and military strategy. "Ambassador Krelix," she said, sitting down across from him. "Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice?" he asked bitterly. "Yes," Sarah said simply. "You always had a choice. You chose to attack us. Then you chose to keep attacking even when it was clear you couldn't win. Now you've chosen to negotiate. Every step of the way you had choices." Krelix said nothing. What could he say? She was right. "The Council has asked me to discuss terms," he said finally. "We wish to end this conflict." "Terms?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That's an interesting way to put it. You came here 6 months ago and demanded our complete surrender. Now you're asking for terms?" "The situation has changed. Yes, it has." Sarah opened a folder and pulled out several documents. "Let me tell you what's changed. Your fleet is gone. Your supply lines are in ruins. 3 of your member species are in open rebellion. 2 more are threatening to leave the Council unless you withdraw from human space. Your economy is collapsing under the cost of this war. And best of all, from our perspective, you've lost all credibility as an unstoppable galactic power." She slid the documents across the table. "These are our terms. Full sovereignty for Earth and all human colonies. Reparations for the colonies you destroyed and the people you killed. A formal apology from the Council. And a permanent seat on the Council with full voting rights and veto power over any future military actions." Krelix looked at the documents. The terms were harsh but not unreasonable. Certainly better than he'd feared. "The Council will accept these terms," he said quietly. "But I must ask, why didn't you destroy us completely? You could have. In the last month, you've captured or disabled almost all of our remaining ships. You could have pushed into Council space and conquered our worlds. Why didn't you?" Sarah leaned back in her chair. "Because that's not who we are. Yes, we're good at war. We've had a lot of practice. But war isn't our goal. Peace is. We fought you because you didn't give us a choice. But we stopped fighting the moment you were willing to negotiate. Many species would have taken revenge, would have made us suffer." "Many species," Sarah agreed. "But humanity learned a long time ago that revenge is expensive. It costs lives, resources, and time. And in the end, it doesn't make things better. It just creates new enemies and new wars." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. "Do you want to know the real reason we're not conquering the Council? It's because we don't want to become what you tried to make us. You wanted us to be another conquered species, just another number on your list. We refused. But if we'd conquered you, we become the thing we were fighting against. An empire that forces others to submit." Krelix thought about that. "You're very different from us." "Yes," Sarah said. "We are, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the galaxy needs a different perspective." She turned back to face him. "But I need to tell you something else. Something important. While you were fighting us, something interesting happened. Our scientists were studying your technology. Your ships, your weapons, your communication systems. Everything we captured, we took apart and figured out how it worked." A cold feeling crept over Krelix. "And?" Sarah smiled. It wasn't a cruel smile, but it wasn't entirely friendly either. "And we've improved it. Your antimatter cannons? We've made them more efficient and more powerful. Your shield technology? We've adapted it to work with our own systems. Your FTL drives? We've increased their speed by 30%. She walked back to the table and sat down. "In 6 months of war, we've taken 10,000 years of your technological development and made it better. Not because we're smarter than you, but because we've had practice reverse engineering enemy technology. We've been doing it to each other for our entire history. Krelix felt his stomach drop. You're saying you're now more advanced than the Council? In military technology? Yes, significantly. We're also willing to share this technology with other species. For a price, of course? Trade agreements, defense pacts, cultural exchanges. The kind of thing that builds real relationships instead of forced compliance. The implications hit Krelix like a physical blow. The Council's power had been based on having the best technology, the biggest ships, the strongest weapons. If humanity could give that same technology to any species that wanted it, the Council's monopoly was broken, forever. You've changed everything, he said softly. Yes, Sarah agreed. We have the galaxy you knew is gone. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. The Council can adapt. You can become a true alliance of equals instead of an empire ruling over conquered peoples. You can trade instead of conquer. You can negotiate instead of demanding. She pushed the terms across the table again. Sign these. End the war. And then we can talk about the future. A future where humanity and the Council work together instead of fighting. Krelix picked up the documents. He read them carefully, even though he'd already decided to sign. The Council had no choice. But as he read, he realized something. These terms weren't designed to humiliate the Council. They were designed to create a framework for peace. The reparations were significant but not crushing. The apology was formal but not degrading. The seat on the Council gave humanity power but didn't take power away from anyone else. Sarah Chun wasn't trying to destroy the Council. She was trying to reform it. You could have demanded much more, he said. Yes, Sarah agreed. But then you'd resent us. You'd spend the next century planning revenge, and we'd end up fighting another war. This way, we both get something we want. You get peace and the chance to rebuild. We get recognition and a voice in galactic affairs. Krelix signed the documents with all four hands. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Sarah said with a slight smile. But I think we'll figure it out. Humanity has always been good at adapting. As Krelix prepared to leave, he turned back to Sarah. I have to ask. That first day, when you laughed at our ultimatum, was that real? Or was it a tactic? Sarah's smile widened. Oh, that was completely real. You showed up with 500 ships to demand the surrender of a species that spent 10,000 years fighting. It was genuinely funny. Like watching someone threaten a Wolf pack with a stick. Krelix couldn't help it. He laughed. It was a short, bitter laugh, but it was real. We were the ones with the stick, weren't we? Yes, Sarah said. You were. We were the wolves. The news of the peace agreement spread quickly through both human and Council space. Reactions were mixed. Some Council members were relieved. Others were furious. Some humans celebrated. Others wanted to press their advantage and conquer Council worlds, but Sarah Chun knew something that most people didn't understand. Military victory was easy compared to winning the peace. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy as a major power. Now came the hard part, figuring out what to do with that power. Earth's military advisors presented plans for expanding human territory, for building a human empire. But Sarah rejected them all. We didn't fight a war for freedom just to turn around and take freedom from others, she said. Instead, she proposed something different. Humanity would use its new technology and military strength to offer protection to smaller species. Not conquest, protection. Any species that wanted to remain independent could sign a defense pact with Earth. In return, humanity would help defend them from aggression. It was a radical idea. An empire built on voluntary cooperation instead of forced submission. Many people said it wouldn't work. But Sarah had faith. Not because humans were naturally peaceful, they weren't. But because humans had learned through bitter experience that cooperation worked better than domination in the long run. Within a year, 37 species had signed defense pacts with Earth. Within 5 years, that number had grown to over 100. The galactic balance of power had shifted permanently. The Council adapted. Some members left, unable to accept the new reality, but most stayed, reformed, and slowly changed from an empire into a true alliance. It wasn't easy. It took decades. But it happened, and at the center of it all was humanity. The species that laughed when the galaxy demanded their surrender. The species that had spent 10,000 years learning how to fight. And finally, after all that time, the species that learned how to use their strength to build something instead of destroy it.